Hey everyone, it's Mike Hughes from Lord of Minis at Lord of Minis on Instagram. Today we're going to take a look at how to paint a smoldering molten fiery base. I know what you're thinking, and no, I've never owned the pseudonym Smoldering Molten Fiery, at least not that I'm aware of. I have a full Horus Ascended painting tutorial coming soon, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. It'll include a number of more advanced painting techniques, including gold non-metallic metal, as well as how to paint gems and armor. I've taken a slice from that tutorial and will be showing you how I painted the molten base. These are the usual suspects for this project. The list of paints and inks are in the description below. As always, I'm using Kimura, Artis Opus, and Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes in the Everlasting Wet Palette from Redgrass Games. We have an awesome base here that consists of skeletons, bones, rock, and other debris such as metal helmets and iron grates. We're going to start off basing with a white paint. We're going to use Bold Titanium White from Acryl. And what we want to do is we want to get in all of the recesses throughout the base. The white paint is going to allow for the fluorescent colors to show their natural color. If the fluorescent inks go over the top of any dark color, they blend with whatever color is underneath. So we want a pure white. So after we base the entire base in white, we are going to then move on to our first ink, which is going to be a fluorescent yellow ink. This is easy to use. You just need to put a little bit in a cup and brush it on and wait for it to dry. That's a key point here. You gotta wait for your inks to dry before applying anything else over the top. We're then gonna take our fluorescent orange from AK Interactive and we're gonna dry brush that on all of the raised surfaces. We're gonna pretty much cover 80%, maybe a little bit more of all of the raised surfaces. And we're gonna continue to do this all the way to the saturated reds and the darker reds, and then onto our smoke black and lilac highlights at the end of this. You can see that this is going on very thin, so we're going to need multiple coats to cover the entire base. We really want to get all of the raised surfaces here, or as much as we can. We also want to leave the yellow in the recesses. Very important. This is what the fluorescent orange looks like over the top. It's not incredibly precise. We're going to use an airbrush now to airbrush on some Pyrrole red ink with some matte varnish. We're also going to be using this HPBH Highline airbrush. Before that, I like to use some Play-Doh to kind of cover up any areas that I don't want sprayed. Now, Play-Doh is perfect to do quick masks because it doesn't stick to anything and you can get it off very easily. So I'm hitting the base from the side. You can kind of see I'm sweeping back and forth. What the Pyrrole red is doing is it's blending with all the colors on there right now. And pretty much from the fluorescent yellow to the fluorescent orange to the Pyrrole red, we're still really using incredibly bright colors. So this is essential. We're also creating a focal point. I want to have the Pyrrole red go around the base and not in the middle. You'll see it's going around. We'll pretty much go all the way around. You can see here what that ends up looking like. And we're giving emphasis towards where that hammer is and where the lightning is coming out of the hammer. We're going to leave those areas in there in the recesses yellow and with a lot of that fluorescent orange. But we did hit the other areas with the Pyrrole red around the bottom of the base. Also inside of the grate. In the recesses of the grate, I left the yellow in there as well to give it this sort of feeling that there's something under the grate. Next up, we're going to use Burnt Red by AK Interactive. What we're going to do is we're going to hit the tops of everything, and we're going to allow that Pyrrole red and orange, fluorescent orange, to start to come through things like the rib cages and the eyes of the skulls. We're going to keep that, the yellow and fluorescent orange sort of smoldering underneath everything. The burnt red is a great color because it's still ultra saturated. So you can add water to it and really blend in. So if you did like a 50% water to 50% paint, you can get a really nice blend between the burnt red and the Pyrrole red. Again, we're hitting all the raised surfaces. The idea here is that the things that are raised higher are starting to cool down. So the pieces that are raised the highest will have the darkest value to them. So we're going to work our way towards the smoke black at the highest of the raised surfaces. You can also see that the brush is not loaded with paint like you would normally load it. I'm using it kind of between how you might load a brush and how you might use a dry brush. It's just a technique I'm using here. You can for sure take your brush, load it, and go precisely over every single piece. And actually I do that later on, but right now I'm just sort of doing the overall general coverage right now across those raised surfaces. We're going to go in now with our smoke black and our lilac. And the smoke black is really going to go on the very tops of certain areas. And the lilac is going to go where the raised surfaces are starting to really cool down. What's nice about the lilac is that if we go to, let's say, our main image here, you can see that the lilac actually provides this sort of look of ash, has a sort of ashy quality to it. So it does work on bone. It works great on metal because when metal's cooling, it sort of has that, sort of, that look to it as it's cooling. So we're going to apply that not only across the tops of where the charcoal black is, but we're going to put it over where the burnt red is too, because it just looks so good. It looks good over the burnt red and the smoke black. So the smoke black, just to go back to that, that's mainly used for the stone, the things that have cooled the most, the very tops of the pieces that are coming out. Again, we want to make this thing look like it's starting to cool, but it's still smoldering underneath. And we're going to work our way around the piece so that it's a little darker around the edges and it highlights where that lightning is coming out of the hammer. This is what we have so far, and you can see how that's working. How just the very tops are starting to cool. Those are the darkest with the lilac highlights. But again, you can put those lilac highlights across some areas of the bone. We're giving the emphasis now towards the lightning, where the yellow is still coming through the bottom there, and this lightning is shooting up to the hammer. and we're sort of circling into that area. You can see where we've put the lilac on top of the bone and on top of the metal pieces. It all works together. We can also blend some of that lilac. So if you take a lot of water, like 70% water to 30% paint, kind of take a lot of the water out of there so it's just not, so the brush isn't totally loaded and it's not dripping everywhere. And you can kind of blend in some of the areas very lightly, which I will actually end up doing across the whole piece in the end. The metal pieces actually will use a lot of that sort of lilac blended into it to give the appearance that the actual plane of the surfaces are cooling. We're just going to do a little bit more blending on some of this metal and armor. I'm probably going to go into some of these areas with the figures coming out of the armor, do some things with possibly their skin. Probably more the charcoal black is going to go into the skin areas, as gross as that sounds, because those areas would be just turning to ash. And then I'm definitely going to need to go into all of the stone areas and make sure that they're really, really dark and have the appropriate lilac tint to them so that those look like they're cooling. Here's what it looks like from a distance. You can see that lightning is really starting to pop now, and that's the idea there. So speaking of the lightning, I actually redid the lightning there. I didn't like the first thing that I did with it. It's sort of tricky to do. What I used was a 11 gauge guitar wire here. I just had an extra string laying around. I play guitar. You want a really, really thin wire like that. So, you know, if it's guitar wire, 11 gauge or 9 gauge, and then I have this jeweler's tool here that you could probably even use a scissors just to bend the ends around. You basically bend it into whatever shape you want. The idea, though, being that here I really don't want the shape to be completely obtrusive to any of the angles that I'm going to be shooting at. So if you take a look, it's silhouetted really nicely now against the base as well as the leg. So if you were to take a photograph from that angle, you're going to see that lightning shoot up at an angle that works from the front left, front right, and even the back. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the Molten base for the Horus Ascended model from Games Workshop. It's part of a much larger tutorial that'll cover non-metallic metal, how to paint armor, how to paint gems, and how to paint skulls. Thanks again, and I'll see you here back soon.